Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are going back to something that I haven't done in a very long time, and that is a book review. But I am going to review Eye of the World, obviously if you've seen the title of the video, but I'm going to rate and review the audiobook. First and foremost, Eye of the World. It's book one of The Wheel of Time. The TV show is now out. I have been rereading it or re-listening or listening for the first time. Technically rereading the entire series again. I just finished up Eye of the World. I'm not going to have any spoilers for the rest of the series, but I will be talking in depth about book one and what I like about it, what I don't like, so on and so forth. Maybe get into the changes that the show has been doing. But the audiobook is just absolutely wonderful. It is read by Kate Redding and Michael Kramer. They are regulars in terms of doing Robert Jordan and also Brandon Sanderson audiobooks. So they're really good. I guess it's spoilers for book one, but reading, for the most part, Rand's perspective throughout this book and kind of watching him wrestle with the idea that he could be the Dragon Reborn is a lot more fun to read about on the second time. The first time I read this book, the first time I attempted to read this book was in 2013. 8 years ago when the final book, A Memory of Light, came out. And I picked up books 1, 2, and 3 on one of my paychecks at a scout camp. And I remember opening it up and getting to Winter Night, which is when the Trollocs invade the Two Rivers and our characters have to run away. Very different, technically, than how the show dealt with it. I thought how the show did Winter Night was much better, but I think this is something that I think is going to draw a lot of people into the books, is to explore all of the details, because in episode 1 alone, we got to like chapter 10 of this book series, basically. And as of recording this is December 12th. Episode 6 just dropped when they are going into the ways with Loial. And hearing Michael Kramer do Loial was so amazing. He nailed it. The actor is absolutely nailing it. Hamad Animashan, I believe is how you say his last name. He is so awesome. I love how they are adapting Loial. I love all the casting. I'm planning on doing a video soon, kind of discussing reactions to the casting and inviting multiple content creators on, see what the general reactions are. But watching the show is just so much more fun for those who have read the books, because there's so many little details from the book that is being shown on screen. There are lots of changes. It's something that I'm trying not to kick back on, because I do know it's an adaptation, and in Weld there's a explanation saying like, oh, it's just another turning of the wheel, things basically stay the same, but how these things occur kind of change with every turning of the wheel. And so that's kind of the attitude that I'm taking on when looking at the show from a reader perspective. I am absolutely loving the show, as I said earlier, but there are so many changes from this book, of course, and storylines are very much the same but different. In the books, after they leave the Two Rivers, first they go to Baerlon. They have to run away again, and then they go back and forth between like 5 or 6 different ends. And then they go to Shadow Logoth, where it's a dark city. We don't really get much Shadow Logoth in the show, which I thought was really interesting. I thought we would kind of get to know more about just its history and how Beelzemon, during one of Rand's dreams in the book, explains that he was kind of responsible for the decay of Shadow Logoth, and he also caused the Trolloc Wars. And that's another huge change that has happened so far, is that we've had Beelzemon sightings throughout the TV show, but it's mostly just a jump scare, fire mouth, fired eyes, screaming at, the camera. And that's one thing. I think that's my least favorite thing, but it's like, again, we're not done with the season yet. We don't have episode 7 or 8, so I'm kind of keeping an open mind, but I do want to see more Beelzemon. I want to see the Beelzemon from the book, where he is taunting Mat, Perrin, and Rand, and Al3 ta'veren. And in the show, it's 5, technically. Moraine comes to the Two Rivers and thinks it's one of 4 people: Rand, Mat, Perrin, and Nynaeve, I believe, and Egwene. Nynaeve gets captured in the show. In the books, she is not captured. She just kind of catches up to them later. But that's another big change from the books. It's something that I'm fine with. I mean, if you have read any books at all outside of the Wheel of Time, just, literature in general, you will know pretty quickly that Rand is the Dragon Reborn. And so far on the show, we have knocked out Nynaeve and Mat as the Dragon Reborn. So it could be Logain, although they stilled him in the show and in the books, so he's out too. But all we have left is Egwene and Rand, I believe, and Perrin. But Moraine hasn't ruled out Perrin, as she's coming along on that journey with them. But after Shadow Logoth, they get split up. Perrin and Egwene are together. Perrin becomes a wolf brother, which is one of my favorite things about the books. I wish Elias was around in the TV show. I understand why they didn't. But they meet up with the Tuatha'an, who are the people of the Leaf. They follow the way of the Leaf, and they're basically non-violent. They don't believe in using violence, as that just continues as a loop. And later on in the series, we'll find out why they do that, why this culture came around. But we also have Rand and Mat kind of exploring the countryside. They're trying to get to Camelin. Everyone is. That's where Moraine told everyone to go if they split up, and they did at Shadow Logoth. And Rand and Mat are just kind of hopping from one end to the next. And they do it like 5 times, and they keep bumping into Dark Friends the entire time. And this is something I did not care for when I first read on my second attempt through this book. The first one was in 2013. The next one that I did was last year in 2020. So in like September or August, I believe, according to my Goodreads. But this was a part I did not like, was them hopping from one end to the other and getting confronted by Dark Friends. I did not care for that at all. I really like what they're doing with the show, where Rand and Mat went to one end, and they had a really great experience there working for Arim. And we meet Dana, who I don't think is in the books. And she tells Rand that they can have the room free tonight or whatever. And he's like, wow, thank you so much. He's like, yeah, you and your boyfriend can, talk it out. These walls, no one can hear you, So he's like, oh, no, I'm not into him. I can do better than him, which I loved that moment. And then it's revealed after she locks the door that she's a dark friend and she's already contacted the Mildral and they're coming. This is a big change from the books. They basically took 5 different meetings of dark friends and Mildral and condensed it into one inn, which is in a new town that we don't really see in the books. It is named. It is something Spring or Breen Spring or something like that, which I don't know if it was just me, but they were doing like excavation in this town when Rand and Mat walked into this town. And it looked like they were digging up like old machinery. I don't know if that's like from Age of Legends or even before in terms of the first age, but it looked like they were digging up machinery. And I really like that nod that this is a second, or a third age of the once was the Age of Legends. And now we're digging up these artifacts nowadays while our characters are just walking by and giving no attention to it. But after that, Mat and Rand go to Camlann. They finally arrive and they stay at the Queen's Blessing, I believe is the inn, with Basil Gill, who is one of our favorite innkeepers throughout the entire series. He's around for a while. He pops in and out throughout the series. On the subtitles, his name is dropped. It says like Basil Gill, : and then his line when you have subtitles on. So he is on the show, but I think this show is very truncated when comparing to the books. This is very much a Lord of the Rings movies versus the actual books. And this is the best case scenario, in my opinion, where you either get really familiar with the movies first or the books. And when you watch the adaptation first, before reading the books, you get the basic skeleton of the story. You get to know the characters, you get to have mental images of the characters. And so when you read the book, and there's hundreds of pages, especially in Wheel of Time, where it goes even beyond 1,000 pages, it makes reading it so much more satisfying. And this is why I am very excited for show-only watchers to pick up the books, because they're going to read this book. And first of all, the prologue with Lews Therin Telamon and Ishamael as after the Dark One tainted Saidin, Ishamael comes by Lews Therin's place and finds that he is absolutely insane. He has become completely just destroyed mentally. He is literally insane. And first of all, I cannot wait to see what show watchers think of that chapter, because we haven't had any Lews Therin yet. We've had his name maybe once or twice, but I do know that in episode 7 we get to find out who the dragon is, and Lews Therin is casted, as we know. So I'm very curious to see how that will go. Let this video be, I guess, a way for people to kind of see what my theories are for the last 2 episodes, but I have a feeling that we're going to get some flashbacks. I don't know if we'll get flashbacks to the Age of Legends. I think they should hold that until season 3 or 4 when they do the Shadow Rising. And for those who have read the Shadow Rising, know what section I'm talking about. Let's not show the Age of Legends until then. But I'm very, very curious to see if they will ever do the prologue to this book, because it's so weird. And it was after reading the entire series, all 14 books and the prequel, that I finally went back and reread book 1, of course. But first I read New Spring as a way to usher in the next read. And reading the prologue and listening to it by Michael Kramer was insane. I loved how emotional it is, because the first time you read it, you're like, who are these people? What's going on? What? And on your second time through, you know like 90% of the terms and concepts that these characters are just name dropping. There are so many capitalized terms in this section of the book. And to hear Michael Kramer doing a Luz Theron voice was so spine chilling. I cannot wait for future events where we get more Luz Theron voices, because oh my god, this is gonna look. I can't wait to even hear Michael Kramer talk about this. But anyways, they all go to Camelin to the Queen's Blessing to Basil Gill's Inn, and in the show they are not going to Camelin yet. They are going there in season 2. That's all we know. I don't know any more details. But in the book it's Camelin, in the show it's Tar Valon. We get a lot more better flow in terms of the stories on how everything's just kind of in one location. Bunch of different things happening, everything with Moiraine and Siuan. Loved it. Loved the relationship. I loved Nynaeve visiting Mat and trying to help him, and then because she views herself as the healer, and she's unable to heal him, and it's just kind of like, oh, he'll survive till tomorrow, and we'll get Moiraine. And then Moiraine sees him and is like, what the fuck? You should have got me immediately. Like, that was so stupid of you to not tell me immediately. And we get that healing, quote unquote, of Mat's taint. I did not mean to say it like that. We get that scene of Moiraine kind of cleansing the corruption that Mat has. I'm just kind of losing it that I said that. We don't know if Mashadar is still kind of corrupting him or not, but I'm hoping he's not healed all the way, because by the end of this book, just to get away from the show, he is still under the dagger's influence. He must have it on him at all times. And it's later on that it's finally kind of dealt with. But while that's happening in the books, he's just kind of laying on a bed this entire section. And Moiraine helps him and is like, okay, let's go. Let's go through the Waygate. Loial, help us. But not before Rand finds himself in the Queen's Palace and meets our favorite characters ever. I know nobody actually does like them, but I do. They're interesting to read about. They're fun, I guess. But Elaine, Garwin, and Galad, along with the first appearances of Elida, of Morghese, Queen Morghese. We get Talonboy, who I did not care about at all when I first read this book, but reading this book, knowing what I know about his character, Talonboy is so much more cool. He is so much more interesting than I thought he would be. Everything with the Queen's storyline of where Rand goes, and we get so many great foreshadowings during this part. And it's something I'm looking forward to on the show, although it will be, I guess, next year in 2022, season 2, that we get Elaine and Garwin and all that. But it's during this time when he returns to the inn and discovers that Baalzamon has figured out who the Dragon Reborn is. And so his dreams are getting even worse. I love the dreams in the show, by the way. I think my favorite one is the one where they are at the Grenwell farm, and they're sleeping, and Rand finds himself in his dream, and Baalzamon is there. Mat has hands of red. wonder what that's about. There was watching this show. There's so much foreshadowing to later stuff. There are things that Logain says in his episode, in episode 4, I believe, where he's talking to the king of Gialdan, which we don't get in the book. That's just something that's kind of said offhand, like, oh yeah, there's this guy named Logain, he's a false dragon, whatever. In the show, they switch around Nynaeve, Moiraine, and Lan's story and have them be directly involved, which is a much better way to do it than off screen here. Like Logain, we learn nothing about him until like book 4. And that's barely even about, learning about him. So after book 4, it's like a couple books without any mentions of him. And then we finally get some really significant stuff with him. So I'm happy they're making him more important early on. But there's so much great foreshadowing. There's stuff from like book 12 that like characters have a line about that are like not hinting at, but it's like great foreshadowing. But they wake up in the Queen's blessing and they keep finding dead rats, and with their backs broken, which Baalzamon causes in the dreams, they see rats folding in on themselves and snapping their own backs, and all this really gruesome dream stuff. But Moiraine comes by, finds them, everyone's reunited, finds out that everyone doesn't believe Rand, really, about seeing Morghese and Elaine and the daughter heir of the of Andor and all this stuff. And Moiraine meets Loial, and they're like, hey, let's go. We gotta go to the Eye of the World. It's time. It's a little more rushed in the book because up to this point, it's about 70% of the book has been traveling and talking and just character development. And to go from that to, okay, we gotta go now. And they go through the ways. They go to Fal Dara. They meet with Ingtar, with Lord Agomar, or Agomar. And then they go to the Blight, go to the Eye of the World, meet the Green Man, all this different stuff. It's a lot more rushed in the books. Or, it's not rushed, it's more conventionally paced than what the book was before that point. In the show, they're keeping with that pace, because we don't really know what the Eye of the World is in the book. They just kind of show up there, and it's like many books later, we finally get the context of what the Eye of the World is, and why it's there, and why the Green Man is there. And in the show, it seems like the Eye of the World is being mixed with the Dark One's prison, because they're going there thinking that they're going there to fight the Dark One. And this is really confusing to me, because in the books, they were going there, I think, because they also thought it was the Dark One's prison up there. But it's nowhere near Sheol Ghul, which confuses me. And maybe I'm just like not thinking about it too much. But in the show, they make it very clear that we need to bring one of these, or all of these people from Emond's Field, because one of them could be the Dragon Reborn, and he's supposed to fight the Dark One and beat him. Let's go! And then Mat stays behind, which is really sad, because a lot of people are confused by that. And the thing that I read about, someone mentioned that episode 6 was the final episode that they had made to completion before COVID hit and they had to halt filming. And the actor for Mat, Bonnie Harris, left the project. He is recasted now, and he is not in the show anymore. And so for episodes 7 and 8, I guess we're just not going to see Mat again, which makes me very curious about what Padan Fane is going to do for the rest of the book, or at least the rest of the show, because we've seen him in Tar Valon, kind of stalking Rand and Mat. He's in the background, so if you missed him, then you need to rewatch it. But he's in the corner and like whistling at one point. We're never really shown, Padan Fane right there in front of you. It's mostly like he's in the way corner, like half of his face is there, looking around the corner. But I'm really curious what they're going to do with Padan Fane after this, because in the books, when they enter the ways, Padan Fane sneaks in there too, and he is eaten by Machin Shin, which we haven't gotten yet in the show. They just entered the ways, and then the episode ended when Mat refused to go through. But I'm really curious and excited to see the ways and Machin Shin, because Machin Shin, I remember reading it last year, this book, and getting to the point where Machin Shin appears and is like talking about like sweet blood and tender flesh and just all this stuff, just really nasty descriptions. And throughout the entirety of that scene, I'll remember that's when it clicked about how much I liked the book, because I love these little supernatural, weird, scary horror elements throughout this book and throughout the entire series. It was around this point that I was happy that I had books 2 and 3. So, and I will talk about that later as we get through the series. But after they go through the ways, they go to Faldawa, which is a borderland town that is right near the Blight, and they meet Lord Agelmar, and they meet Ingtar, and they find that Padan Fane has been trying to get like into the castle for a while now. And so Moiraine sees him and is like, ew, he is even more rotten than like Trollocs or Myrddraal. And it is so disgusting. And like what Padan Fane is now. And they kind of remark, they're like, wait, like he went through the ways with us, like without us realizing it. He was like in the fringe, in the darkness. But like, how did he escape Machin Shin, this like crazy metaphysical entity within the ways? And Moiraine just simply says like, oh, it did eat him, but it spit him back up because he was so tainted and disgusting that Machin Shin, this disgusting result from the taint on the ways, doesn't even want his soul. And it's so, ugh. I remember reading that and I was like, oh god, like, that's so disgusting. And the reveal that it was Padan Fane who sent the Trollocs and Myrddraal to Two Rivers is also really sad. Because the first time we see him, Padan Fane is this wondrous merchant who brings tales of, false dragons and the Second Age and even the First Age, along with Tom. Tom also gives some fun dialogue about those. But hearing that and hearing that this merchant figure that all these boys and Nynaeve and Egwene have always looked forward to every summer, for him to arrive, and discovering that it's him that caused the destruction of the village, is really hard to watch. And I can't wait for that moment in the show to see how that's done. But after they have a meeting with him, they're like, okay, it's time to go. And Lord Ingtar is getting mad because he wants to send thousands of troops. And Lan is like, no, we're not doing that. We have to make no, we can't have our enemies knowing that we're going to the Eye of the World. And they're kind of like, hey, the Eye of the World is not an actual place. You have to be summoned by the Green Man in order to go to, the Eye. And Moiraine is like, oh, like, I've met with the Green Man before, and usually you can't see him twice you can't see him more than once. And so everyone's just kind of like, so that means we can't go see him. And he's like, and Moraine says, because of our need is so great, he must see me again. And so they find him. They just 1 minute walk into the Green Man's grove or whatever, and we get some really great dialogue, world building, foreshadowing, so much foreshadowing to like future books throughout that scene. And then 2 of the Forsaken, who have broken out of the Dark One's prison, or the boy as they call it. They haven't called it that in the show yet, but 2 of them, it's Agenoi and Balthamel, I believe. Who Agenoi is a much cooler Forsaken than many of the others. Balthamel I know nothing about. He is one of the Forsaken who is absolutely, I guess, ignored after this scene. We don't really hear from him again or any details about him. Agenoi is a continuing presence because of the actions that he does in this book in terms of breaking free and what he did during the Age of Legends. We get so many great historical backgrounds on all these Forsaken. And Balthamel, I remember next to nothing about, but Agenor is the coolest thing. Coolest Forsaken up to this point, aside from Baalzamon. But they fight for a bit. The Green Man dies. We think Igraine has died, and Rand notices a power source and holds on to it, and it ends up being the Eye of the World. It's a little bit of untainted or uncorrupted Sidene that he then uses to defeat Baalzamon. And then they find a, I don't know if it's ever confirmed, but it seems to be a stasis box where they stored it in the Age of Legends. These items that they find, the Horn of Valia is in there, the Dragon's Banner is in there, and I'm really curious how they will do that in the show. But I do think it is a stasis box. That's what I think it is. I know some people will say, like, there's no way. But to me, I'm like, whatever. But the final showdown with Baalzamon is going to be so epic on the show. And I'm very curious, because we haven't heard of any castings of Forsaken. It's really, for Season 2, we got a casting for one of the later Forsaken, Demandred. That's the first time we've had an actor tied to a Forsaken. We don't know who it is yet, but that's the first, like, confirmation of a Forsaken behind the scenes, I guess, in terms of casting. So I'm excited to see what they do, why they are putting in Demandred so much earlier. We get his name like in book 3, I think, and then isn't until later, which I'll talk about once I get to that book, that we get a appearance of Demandred. So very interesting that they casted him this early. But I'm very curious to see the final 2 episodes. And I'm thinking about doing, because I am moving out very soon, within the next week or 2. And I plan on rewatching all the episodes after I have everything set up, like internet-wise, and my TV, computer, all that. Because I want to know, because I want to do a review, but I didn't want to do reactions of each episode, because there's so many things that we are missing that I need to have the context. And so I will be doing a Wheel of Time TV show episode or series review when Season 1 ends. That way I can rewatch it and see how all the pieces and decisions they made fit together. So I think that's it. I think that's all I want to talk about. But I just got book 2 on Audible. I haven't downloaded it yet, but I'm going to go through that for the next 2 weeks, I think. and then do a review on that. This isn't going to be as intensive as those 2+ hour discussions I had with Shay and Alf, because this is just like recapping what I like and what I don't like of each book, and mostly just giving full spoilers for these books. Now, one thing that just struck me is whether to do a full series spoilers review of each book. I might do that later. I might wait until I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but I really want to have somebody else with me when I'm doing a full series spoilers review of each book. Maybe if Alf finishes or something, or I find someone else who wants to do a full series review. I don't know. Just kind of something to think about for me. So, yeah, that is kind of my not quick, it's over 30 minutes. But that's kind of my review of Eye of the World. This is not the strongest book. For the longest time until I got to book 7, I thought it was the weakest book. But not saying it's bad. This is a really strong book. The pacing is very off for anyone who's not used to it. Reading this now, there is so much buried within the subtext that nobody would ever catch unless you've read all of the books. So, I think that's it. Thank you all for watching.